That's right.
The government had a plan in 2015 to build housing on surplus land. Do you know how many homes they've built since 2015? 13. That's less than 2 a year. Liberal MPs have flipped more houses than that.
Welcome back to Northern Perspective, everyone. I'm Cypher.
And I'm Fox. We're back in question period today where Justin Trudeau was absent yet again. But that didn't stop the Conservatives' second-in-command, Melissa Lantsman, from asking the hard questions.
And don't forget to join us live this Sunday, October 1st at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Northern Perspective After Dark, where we will be discussing the incident that led to the Speaker of the House resigning. Before we get to that, help us keep this channel growing strong by hitting that like button to help push this out to more viewers. And subscribe to the channel so you are notified of our next episode. If you would like to support the channel, check out the description of this video for more details. Now let's get into it.
Prime Minister says that it's not his job to control the inflationary spending or the out-of-control cost of living or the sky-high interest rates that he has caused. He says it's not his job to bring down the price of gas, groceries, or home heating. Instead, he's raising the carbon tax. And he says it's not his job to take personal responsibility for our diplomatic relations or to vet the people who come in contact with a wartime leader. He says housing is not his job either. Well, the housing crisis is getting worse. If it's not his job to do anything, any of these things, what is his job?
Wow, Melissa.
Waste no time, yeah.
That was quite the opening salvo.
Right?
Let's fact check that. Yeah, all of it's true. So,
Let's see what the Liberals say.
yeah, with Trudeau not here, what do you got?
I find it rather rich, Madam Speaker, with all due respect to the member, when that party's leader of the opposition, a responsibility to put forward constructive policy, when he was in opposition, in government, as minister responsible for housing, put forward a plan, $300 million, less than 100 homes built. His plan on housing today is full of holes. He taxed builders, for example. Nothing will get built under his watch, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much.
The honourable member for Thornhill.
Okay, you really want to compare track records. So under Pierre, housing was half as much. Rent, half as much. In terms of spending, let's just take your word for it. 300 million and less than 100 homes built. You have 80 billion and no homes built. You really want to compare that?
Madam Speaker, they spent almost $90 billion to double the price of a home, to double the price of rent, to double the price of a mortgage. In Toronto, it now takes 80% of what Canadians take home to keep a roof over their head. More Liberal spending equals higher inflation, which leads to higher interest rates, which leads to higher mortgages. So how many Canadians have to be in jeopardy of losing their homes before the Liberals stop spending, stop raising taxes, and actually start building homes?
Here's the answer to that. Never enough. There will never be enough Canadians that are without homes for these Liberals to actually start doing the right thing. Because time after time after time, they have just displayed only one skill, and that's the skill of incompetence. If there was a Guinness World Record of the most incompetent government of all time, this would be the untouchable crown right here, this Liberal government. And the arguments they put forward to justify their existence just get more and more obscene as time goes on because things keep getting worse. And they keep talking about things like everything's great. As the polls show, everything's not great, everything sucks. That's why people are mad at you.
Well, and especially in regards to housing, 8 years is a very short amount of time for it to literally double. I was saying to someone in the comments today that if we did not currently own a home, we would not be able to afford one. But because we were fortunate enough to get into the market early, like when we were younger, then, we have a house now. But we would not be able to buy a house today, especially, not with me as a stay-at-home mom.
And I think that's the case with everybody. Ask your parents. Ask your grandparents. If they didn't have a home today, would they be able to afford one? Answer would be no. Absolutely not. And like it's a scary prospect where things are going. And the Liberals are doing nothing substantial to fix it, other than saying, oh, we're going to cut the GST on high-rise buildings. Pat us on the back. Give me a break.
Well, and then rich people could still use those buildings. Like, what I mean is that penthouse suites built in those buildings, like $10 million suites, are tax-free. The Conservatives are trying to put a stop to that, saying, no, only low-income housing apartments should be tax-free, because those are the people who need it the most, not people who can afford, $5, $10, $12 million penthouse apartments.
Right. And what's the major talking point from the Liberals? Oh, the Conservatives always want to, cozy up to their rich buddies. Your main talking point against Pierre's plan is he wants to tax the developers. Yeah, the rich people.
Right. We need affordable homes right now. Apartments for people who can afford a $10 million apartment are not needed. And furthermore, most people, they want a home. They don't want to rent. They want to be a homeowner. So building rentals isn't really going to help the middle class.
Well, and here's the other thing. How long does it take to build an apartment building? Years. How long does it take to build a home? Once construction has started, 6 months, 7 months.
Maybe a year.
Max. But an apartment building? You're dreaming. People need homes now. What's wrong with you?
Madam Speaker, Canadians are having a difficult time. That's why during the pandemic we put forward emergency programs that sustain the economy, individuals and families, when that party didn't want to do any of those things. Today we see a government that's put forward a plan to get more homes built. How? In partnership with provinces, with municipalities. That's how we're going to get things done. Not by measures on the other side that instill nothing but fear in the wider Canadian economy and the wider Canadian society. That's not responsible leadership.
You are talking about fear, and then you're talking about the pandemic in the same breath. Come on. Come on. And now you're trying to invoke the fact that you printed $600 billion in brand new money as somehow your point to prop yourselves up and saying, well, the Conservatives didn't want to do that. Right. The Conservatives didn't want to do that. Why? Because it ended up where we are now.
Well, that's it. Like, you have to be fiscally responsible as a government. It would be like, again, I've used this analogy in the past. It would be like me running out and buying a boat. And right now, we could not afford for me to run out and buy a boat.
Guess what happens when Fox runs out and buys a boat? Cypher takes it back.
But in all seriousness, say I won the lottery and then went out and buy a boat. Different situation, right? But what this government doesn't understand is they're not able to buy the boat. And yeah, okay, the boat might be great and it might be services for all Canadians, but we can't afford it right now. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. Anytime the government gives you something, they're taking it away from your neighbor, your family members, your friends, because tax money doesn't just appear out of nowhere. And when it does, that's what causes inflation.
Home building is actually down just because they have a fancy program or a new acronym every month. It doesn't mean that any of this is working. Right. The government had a plan in 2015 to build housing on surplus land. Do you know how many homes they've built since 2015? 13. That's less than 2 a year. Liberal MPs have flipped more houses than that since 2015. It's been 8 years. We need shovels in the ground and not pies in the sky. So will they finally support a common sense Conservative plan to actually build homes Canadians can afford?
13 homes.
Not 1,300, not 13,000, 13.
13. That's not even embarrassing. There needs to be a new word in the dictionary for that.
Abysmal. Blowful.
Still not strong a word. Like, I don't even know what you call that.
Disgusting.
You've spent $80 billion and you've managed to build 13 homes.
Pathetic.
That Speaker, they've already ruined one tidal project, and I invite the member opposite to tell the people of New Brunswick and Nova Scotia choosing between fueling their car and purchasing groceries how the carbon tax is not punishing them every single day. Atlantic Liberal MPs allege they are not in favour of the carbon taxes while back home, but have supported it 23 times since 2015. Again, they claim that they now are against it. The carbon tax, will they put their money where their mouth is and vote next week to axe the tax?
The Honourable Minister of the Environment and Climate Change.
I would like to remind my honourable colleague that his party campaigned on putting in place a price on pollution in Canada in the 2021 election. But what I find interesting, and I would like to pick on what my colleague was saying, why is the Conservative Party opposing the development of clean energy in Canada? Like the moratorium that Premier Smith has put in place in Alberta, which is putting at risk $30 billion of investment in renewable energy in the clean technology sector. Thousands of jobs are at risk. Will the Leader of the Opposition stand to this House, Madam Speaker, and explain to us whether or not he supports clean energy or not?
I love this argument that they try to make. Captain Dumpster himself.
Nothing like the first cup of dumpster juice in the morning.
According to him, if you cut the carbon tax, that means you don't support clean energy. Pierre and the Conservatives have stated multiple times that they believe that the way to be respectful of the environment moving forward is you make green energy cheaper, not what we use today more expensive. So what does that mean? That means green energy projects like nuclear power plants.
Well, today there is no alternative. The problem is if you drive to work every day and, say it's 10 kilometers, 10 there, 10 back, you have to use that amount of gas 5 days a week. Like, you cannot get around it. What, are you going to go out and buy a $60,000 or an $80,000 electric vehicle? Not everybody can do that. Most people cannot do that, especially in this economy. So instead of just taxing things that we have no choice and we have to use, why don't you create more incentives for green energy? As Cypher said, like nuclear. The Liberals are always going on about wind and solar. You know what? Those are good, clean forms of energy, but they are not constant. The wind's not always blowing and the sun's not always shining, but nuclear, you guys know I'm pro-nuclear. Nuclear can generate the energy that you need and it's always doing it.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous by this point. It was ridiculous before, but the more Jibo talks, the less I can even stand to hear him. A bunch of you say that you can't listen to Trudeau. That's the way I am with Jibo. He sounds like he's gonna have a stroke half the time. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just the fact that French is his first language. I don't know, but he's talking nonsense, and he's saying a proven, like, give me a break. If it was proven that carbon taxes prevent forest fires, well, you've had the carbon tax in for years at this point. So by your logic, the forest fires shouldn't be happening. And of course he's going to say, that just means you don't understand. No, we understand very well.
What I understand is that you guys have let the forestries division go to garbage for the last decade, and the underbrush isn't even being cleared out. And that's what caught fire. Yes, it was a hot summer. Yes, it was a dry summer. But had you guys done a better job of forestry management, this would not have happened. If it was climate change, why weren't there all these horrible forest fires in the States?
Remember that there used to be, a couple of years ago, there was all kinds of forest fires in the States, and all you heard was all the climate activists jumping up and down. Where are they this year? Yes, they have some fires, but not like they were. And what was the major critique back then? Forestry management. Same thing. So they invested some money in forestry management down there. Surprise, surprise, there's less forest fires. But to Fox's point, Canada isn't in a bubble. If you're going to blame forest fires up here on climate change, where's the rest of them?
Yeah, why aren't they happening down south? Not to the extent that they were up here. And again, the answer is because north of that border, the forestry management was abysmal. Last point.
We will reiterate what we've said a dozen times, and we will keep saying it a dozen more. Canada could literally shut down every single gas-using and oil-using device in Canada. We could completely eliminate carbon. And the world would still go on as it is, because you have the big polluters, primarily China, that don't care. We make up 1.6% and falling, because China keeps rising, of the world carbon emissions. It would make zero difference.
China has been able to bring its people out of poverty, and they're not going to go back to the way it was just to save emissions. Now, here's the question that I want to know the answer to. Why is Canada willing to put its people into poverty to cut these emissions?